The opposition is seeking to make a virtue out of underbidding the government in one key policy area in the run-up to next year's election, the rollout of the national broadband network. Communications spokesman Malcolm Turnbull says he'll soon release a plan that will drastically undercut the cost of the government's $37 billion network. But how fast and how effective would it be? Malcolm Turnbull joined me a short time ago from our Parliament House studio. Malcolm Turnbull, thanks very much for being with us.
Great to be with you.
It's said that you've got a fully costed broadband policy. Tell us about it.
Well, our broadband policy is to complete the national broadband network, but to do so sooner, cheaper, less cost to the taxpayer, and much more affordably for consumers. And that is our plan. So we will complete the NBN. All Australians will have access to very fast broadband, but because we'll use a mix of technologies and use the most cost-effective ones where appropriate, we'll be able to do it sooner, cheaper and more affordably.
But not at the very highest possible speeds?
Well, some connections, there will be some fibre to the premises and a lot of fibre to businesses and hospitals and schools and universities. I mean, many of them have fibre now. So there'll be plenty of fibre in the backbone of the network. There'll be plenty of fibre going to the locations that need it. But for the bulk of the addresses in Australia, the premises in Australia, which are residential customers, the very high speeds that fibre to the premises can deliver are far in excess of what residential users either need, let alone will pay for. But more importantly, the problem with fibre to the premises in this residential environment is that it costs 4 times as much to build, or thereabouts, and takes 2, 3 times, 4 times as long to build in terms of time. It's a very slow process, as we've seen with the NBN. The NBN's been going. They connected their first fibre customer 2 years ago, and they've now connected, we think, somewhere around 4,000 customers at the moment. And they claim that a year from now, they'll have 54,000 connected. So it's proceeding at a snail's pace.
But infrastructure, big-scale infrastructure all over the world, it's well known that it takes a long time to build. That's certainly no argument for not doing it at all, is it?
No, it's an argument for doing it smarter. You see, if you have inadequate broadband now, and that is holding you back or holding your kids back, holding your business back, you want it upgraded quickly. Now, what we can do, particularly in the areas where we can do fibre to the node, we can bring people up to very high speeds that are more than adequate for all of the applications that are available now or foreseeably available, and we can do that very quickly. I mean, I'll give you the example of Britain. BT in the last year, just 1 year, has passed 7 million households with fibre to the node, and most of those people in that footprint, if they sought to be connected, would have speeds of at least 50 megabits per second, and many of them would have the highest speed of 80 megabits per second. Now, that's very fast broadband and much faster than current applications and would require, particularly for residential users.
Well, let's take the UK as an example, where the minister, the communications minister equivalent over there, Jeremy Hunt, has recently described fibre to the node, which is your proposal, as a mere stepping stone, that the British ambition is indeed to have, ultimately, fibre to every home, the fastest possible broadband speeds.
Well, that may well be the minister's ambition, if you like, but the government in Britain is not funding the building of a fibre to the premises network at all.
Well, if I can just hold you there, that one of the reasons that might be is because they're absolutely swamped in debt, much more so than Australia is, and certainly not in a position to be funding their current ambition. So that's why, in his words, they can only at the moment achieve a stepping stone towards it.
Well, you've got to be clear. I've spent quite a bit of time talking to the telecom companies in Britain and indeed to the minister. I can tell you what they're doing. They will get, most of them, fibre to the node, for what the Brits call fibre to the cabinet, but in some very remote areas they'll get a combination of wireless and perhaps satellite. So there is government money going in there, but it's nothing like the scale in Australia.
Now, if we just look at your proposal, which is this what's known as fibre to the node, in other words, fibre is the fast broadband. You want to take it to the street corner, and Stephen Conroy wants to take it all the way to the home, if we just simplify it a little bit. Now, if you're just taking it to the street corner, you, of course, need to piggyback onto Telstra's copper network to take it all the way into the home. What I'm curious to know is, under your proposal, will you be buying the copper from Telstra to get it into the home, or will you be leasing it? What sort of arrangement do you propose there, and what will the cost be?
Well, I'm very confident we can secure access to it from Telstra. I think it's most likely that NBN Co would acquire it. The reason why it's manifestly in Telstra's interest to do this is that at the moment the NBN rollout, the fibre to the premises rollout, is going very, very slowly. And of course that means, Emma, that some people who've got inadequate broadband now might have to wait a decade to get an improvement. That's a very long time.
No, well, most of those people have wireless.
Well, well, they do, but wireless is not adequate in some circumstances, and of course it's certainly not economic if you want to be downloading a lot of video, for example. So wireless is a great technology, but fixed line broadband is mostly used for video. That is the overwhelming application, and wireless is a very expensive way of distributing that. But if I can just come back to the Telstra point, Telstra gets paid by the NBN Co as premises that are currently connected to their network are switched over to the NBN Co network. So those payments come at the pace the NBN grows. The slower the NBN grows, the slower Telstra gets the money. If you take the approach we're talking about, because we will be able to upgrade Australian premises much, much more quickly, it will mean that Telstra will get its payments much more quickly as well. And that means the net present value of those payments, that's to say their value in today's money, will be considerably greater.
Now, the Parliamentary Register, we now know, shows that you have personally made an investment in France Telecom, a company which is stating its ambition to have 15 million homes in France on fibre to the home by 2020. And in the words...
That's a very ambitious ambition, I might say. They've got a long way to go, but
well,
anyway,
you've put your why have you made that investment? Obviously, you think their strategy is a good idea, and yet you don't think the government's same strategy in Australia is a good idea. It's curious.
Well, France Telecom is a private company. It's a public listed company, and they're making commercial decisions in a very different market. Whether they achieve that ambition remains to be seen. But I regret to tell you that my reasons for buying France Telecom was because I don't invest, obviously, in telcos in Australia because of my position, so I don't have any conflict with France Telecom. And I thought their shares were good value, so that's why I bought them. But please don't. I don't want anyone to take that as advice to buy them.
But you haven't equally bought shares in British Telecom, which is the company you've just been telling us is doing the right thing by not taking fibre to the home.
Well, that's right. But I'm not. But you've got to understand, as an investor, I'm focused on investment returns. I'm not making political statements every time I make an investment. So. The government is considering investment returns, isn't it, by taking fibre to the home and owning the infrastructure company, or owning the majority of shares in the infrastructure company that achieves that. Well, let me give you a better example. In the United States, there are two of the big telcos, Verizon and AT&T. Verizon did a selective fibre to the premises rollout. AT&T did effectively fibre to the node. The Verizon acknowledges that it will never be able to get a financial return from its investment, within any, reasonable time frame. And AT&T gets very similar revenues from its customers on their product, notwithstanding that it costs between a third and a quarter of the capex to build. But the point, Emma, is this: I'm not suggesting that fibre to the premises will never be economically viable. I don't have a crystal ball. Stephen Conroy can talk about future-proofing. I've been involved in technology too long to know that you can't future-proof against anything. We don't know what will be available in 10 years' time.
But what is wrong with having the highest possible ambition for Australia for broadband? What's wrong with leading the world and having the highest possible speeds?
Well, if it costs you 4 times as much and takes you 3 times as long to get essentially the same result, it's not a very good deal. I mean, this is not...
But it's not the same result, is it?
No, well, it is. You see,
fibre to the node won't give 1 gigabyte, for instance, will it?
That's true. It won't. At least currently, it won't. But can I just say, Emma, before you interrupt me again, the point is this: bandwidth is only of use to you insofar as you have applications that require it. If you were to connect your home in Sydney to 1 gigabit symmetrical broadband at vast expense, it would be of absolutely no use to you unless you decided to dig out your back garden and build an enormous data centre there. So the point is that if the applications that you want, which are, high definition video streaming, all of the social media and commercial applications that you use, if they can be accommodated within bandwidth that can be provided at a quarter of the cost and say a third of the time, then that is a much more sensible deal. And now you may say, in 20 years' time, things will be different. Well, if they're different in 20 years' time, we'll make some further investments in 20 years' time.
But then in 20 years' time, won't it take another 10 years then potentially to build it? And by which stage we will have already built it? Doesn't that make sense?
No, not at all. The fact is that all of these networks generally, when they're built by rational people as opposed to governments with no budget and who don't care about expense, networks are built incrementally, and they're built in advance of demand. But it's very unwise to build any telecommunications network on the basis of build it and they will come. It's been done before, and tens of billions of dollars have been lost. There's a lot of money lost in the late 90s doing just that with subsea cable investment. So it is quite possible to lose tens of billions of dollars, and that's why commercial companies are much more discriminating. So where they do fibre to the premises, they do it in areas where it is cheaper to build. It might be because there's a lot of good underground ducting that they can very cheaply pull the cable through, the fibre through. It may be that they can run the fibre along electricity poles and drop it into the premises aerially. Or it may be that they're in areas where they think there'll be a lot of demand for video services and they can get a return on it. But they make economic decisions. You see, the problem with the NBN is that it is essentially a political decision. It has no budget. There has never been a budget put on it. What the government did was decide to build fibre to the premises to 93% of the population. They've told Mr Quigley to do that, and every now and then he gives them an update as to what he thinks it will cost. But he's never had any financial limit put on him at all. They've never said, Michael, you've got $20 billion to spend or $30 billion to spend. It's like you or me going to a builder and saying, build me this house. I don't care what it costs. You just tell me, just give me a rough estimate how you're going from time to time. And that's a way, obviously, to get, to lose a lot of money. That's exactly what will happen if the NBN continues to be run on this basis. It is going too slow and too expensively. And what we can do, as I said, is complete the job. All Australians will have access to very fast broadband under our proposal that will enable them to do all the things they need to do online, and they will have it sooner, cheaper and more affordably.
Thank you very much. We'll have to leave it there.
Thanks, Emma.